We are on filmsgonewild.com. We are going to talk about the film Ahead of the Curve. We have one of our directors, Jen Rainin, with us. This film is screening at San Luis Obispo International Film Festival. We were just talking before we started that this film has had an amazing film festival tour up to this point. However, whoever's watching this may have not seen the film as yet. So Jen, introduce our audience to Ahead of the Curve. What is it about?
Oh my goodness. Ahead of the Curve is the story of the woman who started the best-selling lesbian magazine in the world. She came on the scene in San Francisco about 1989. She had been outed by her husband to her family. She was living in her car. She had nothing. And she was looking for community and looking for a guide, I guess, to being a lesbian. And so she wanted a magazine. And she couldn't find one that was geared specifically toward queer women. So she decided that, you know, in all her 20-year-old brashness, she's the one who's supposed to make this thing. So, you know, nobody's going to give her any money. She had no collateral, no experience, nothing, except a great idea. So she took out 12 credit cards in one day, because this was before the internet where they could actually track such things. She cashed them out and she went to Bay Meadows racetrack in San Francisco and bet on the horses. And she won enough money that day to start her magazine. So Ahead of the Curve is really the story. It started as the historical story, but in the middle of filming, we got a call, Franco, this woman, who, by the way, I'm married to, got a call from the woman who owns the magazine now saying, oh my gosh, it looks like it's going to go out of business. I can't keep a magazine afloat. But I think that the Curve brand is so vital to the community. Can you help me think through what we should do with it? And so really Ahead of the Curve is a historical story, but it's also the story of what the lesbian and queer women's community needs today, and Franco's journey to expand her understanding and find a path forward.
You know, you led me into perfectly the moment where I get to brag about your movie to your face. And here's what I love about Ahead of the Curve. Yes, it's the history of Curve and before that Deneuve, which became Curve, and Franco. But to your credit, to yours and Rivkah's credit, making this film, you did so much more, and you also didn't take 10 hours to do it. You know, as far as the things you delve into. I want to start off, because there's so much I want to talk about and we don't have that much time, but I want to start off with, from your perspective, because when you're connected to the subject that that you're with, and you even appear in the film, that offers its own specific challenges of distance from the subject, of how objective you can be. So talk about, you know, your perception going in of being aware of that or not, how you dealt with it.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So super aware of it going in. I wasn't supposed to be in this film at all, first of all. I will say it really was supposed to be a historical story. And I only became a part of it myself because when Franco got that call about the issues with the publication now, she needed somebody to process with. And she is actually a super private person. So she needed to process with somebody she really trusted. And that's me. But even from the beginning, I wanted to make sure people, when they talk about Franco, just in general in the community, there's so much gratitude for what she did. And she really is a lovely human being. She's a person who, like, all of her ex-girlfriends are still good friends of ours, you know, like she's that person. She's genuinely got an enormous heart. And so people tend to put her up on they put the cape on her, right? They put her on the pedestal, and they don't want to say anything negative about her. And both Franco and I thought this, and to be perfectly transparent, she is not one of the filmmaking team, but we had a lot of conversations with her about it. She didn't want to be portrayed as, you know, a superhero. She wanted people to see warts and all, you know. She wanted people to see her as a real human being, because I think it was important for her to get the word out. Look, I did this. I met my own needs, and in doing so, I actually met the needs of my entire community. And that's something that you can do also. It's, you know, I'm not a rarefied being. I really, so she's very, very honest. And she would go to the folks that we were interviewing and say, look, tell them the story about how I, did this thing that was not so nice or whatever it was. And so it was, we tried as hard as we could to make this a full and rich story. And you see, I think when you watch the film, she's got flaws. The flaws are pretty clear.
Well, yeah, she has flaws, but she is a remarkable figure by any metric. Not that I got to tell you that, but and also you see by just the sheer impact of the people that you interviewed that were a part of this. People like Ruby Rich and people like that you go, if they sign on, then shit got real, right? Okay, and Rivkah's now with us now.
Hi, thanks. Sorry.
Awesome. All right, so now Rivkah, you're going to come in on the next aspect of the question, which is how you dealt with in the film the discussion about representation, and this is something that if you're straight white dude, I don't have to worry about representation because I get everything, but in the film, it's amazing how even the issue of having the word lesbian on the cover of the magazine and how significant that is. And there are things that, again, that might be obvious to you, might be obvious to Franco, might be obvious to somebody at the time that would not be obvious, even frankly to to someone who's gay and lesbian now, right, because of the work that was done then. So talk about how you address that within the film and how you worked that within, again, like I said, you don't have 9 hours, you've got a short runtime to get into all of this. So how you prioritized to get to that. And so Rivkah, you just joined us, so let's have you weigh in on this first.
Sure, thanks. I appreciate this question because I think it's something that our community and actually, really humans deal with all the time, right? We're always investigating our identities and the ways that we want to represent our identities in public. So in this particular film, it was really important to talk about the word lesbian. Language is always evolving. We think of it as, especially with, LGBTQ+, and there are, several other letters that we want to bring in under this umbrella to make sure that people's identities are honored and seen. The word lesbian has gone through a lot of different stages in our culture, especially in Western culture, thinking about, and we wanted to follow that conversation and help bring people in, help call people in. And so that's why the scene that you see where Franco's on the panel, she's really engaging people. And that's a way to bring our audience into that conversation and to say, look, here's what's happening in queer community right now. And talking about the word lesbian, which when Franco launched the magazine, you couldn't put that word on the cover. Everyone was like, no, that was unfathomable. Not only because it was a word that was freighted with a lot of shame at that time, but also because I think it was too vulnerable. It would expose people too much. Franco had to send the magazine out in a brown wrapper. I mean, it still comes in a brown wrapper because if you're reading that magazine and it says lesbian on the cover, you're outed. Right. And if you're someplace where you don't want to be outed, it can be dangerous.
Well, and again, to compliment both of you from a filmmaking standpoint, how you interweave that and get to that point, it's about as organic as it possibly could be, because frankly, listen, it could be clunky to go from history of Franco to, hey, we want to talk about the subject now. So put on the brakes, yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. And I got one more question, and which also then segues into the next thing, which is the weaponization of the word, and and kind of the perceived damage, so to speak, of the word. That again, you know, it's like after all this good work, so to speak, it's like, no good turn goes unpunished, and now and now it's like, let's not throw that word around because maybe I don't want to be here, and with another generation.
Right.
And again, and I love how, again, that's, the conversations between Franco and I forget the name of the
Andrea.
Yeah,
yes,
by Andrea Pino
yes,
Silva.
Andrea.
Yeah.
They're wonderful because there's both a baton handing down aspect, and there's also this frank conversation of like reaching across, like literally like some decades of, this. I would love for both of you to talk about that for a moment, because again, that's what I think one of the things that makes this documentary a rarity as opposed to just a history of.
I want to give Rivkah a lot of credit for this, because from the very beginning, Rivkah wanted to make sure, I mean, my focus was in the beginning, tell the historical story, do it as well as I possibly can, honor my community. And Rivkah said, yes, and we've got to help folks understand how relevant this story that happened in the 90s and the 2000s is today. And, we went through a number went down a number of paths trying to think that through. And we got a tremendous gift in a very strange way when Silka, the owner of the owner of Curve magazine, that's who Franco sold it to, called up and said, hey, you know what, I need help, because that snapped us into today. So all of the young queer activists that Franco reaches out to, it really was very organic. It really was in response to that. And I'm really heartened to hear you say that it did what we hoped it would do.
Well, again, you guys know I've bragged on the film privately via email to you. I've just done it in this interview. And in fact, the film was reviewed during one of the earlier film festival appearances on Films Gone Wild. And I believe at one point that interviewer, Luke Thompson, I think it was, actually, it was either Luke Thompson or Miguel Sima, actually expressed their thankfulness that you guys made the film. And I think, it's remarkable, or not, that, it'd be one thing for, a young woman, to have that kind of expression and have that kind of response. But when you can literally reach across and everybody can see this and go, holy shit, thank you for letting me in on this. Again, I'll stop bragging on it. The film is Ahead of the Curve, which is screening now at San Luis Obispo International Film Festival. We've been talking to Jen Rainin and Rivkah Beth Meadow. It's been wonderful to talk to you both about the film.
We are so grateful for the opportunity and excited that the film will be available widely on June 1st.